From the deepest, darkest recesses of Dangerous Nerds headquarters, Keith Moncrief and Gerry Kissel.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Minefield. This is Gerry. Keith's not here. I think that he's sleeping in today. He's been, I don't know, he's exhausted from work. And for some other reason, the other person who was supposed to be here today, Andrew P. or I just messed up his name.
You're right, Andrew P.
Anderson is not here today because he's got electrical problems, power outage. So his partner in crime is going to be here, and my buddy Ron McCain, who's a far more established comic book artist than me, and you know, a lot better too, to be honest. But Ron's here to join us to talk about some nerd stuff, because that's what we talk about here. See, it says it at the top of the screen, talking nerd stuff. And we've already been talking before the show, and I'm already bored with Ron, and so I thought we'd get into it. And the first thing I like to do when I'm talking to my friends that are artists is, come on, dude, what got you started with comics? It's always a title, or it's either Marvel or DC. I was shocked one day when someone said Charlton Comics, and I'm like, yeah, I get it, I dig it. But they were older than you and me a little.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So what got you started, Ron?
What got me started buying?
Loving comics.
Just loving comics.
Yeah.
It was a trip to the 7-Eleven when I was a little kid. We were on our way to, me and my dad. We were going to go play catch at the park, and this new place called 7-Eleven had opened up, and we decided to go there, grab a Slurpee, and I saw this spin rack, and the spin rack had all these little magazines on it, and I didn't know the first thing about comics. All I saw were these brightly colored characters on the covers, and I was like, and I grabbed one. It was Spider-Man 125, and then Fantastic Four 143. And I looked at my dad as he was paying for everything like that, and he said, "Yeah, come on, bring him over." And then we went to the park. You know, I wadded him up. I stuck him in my back pocket. We went to the park, and we played catch. And when we got tired, we, sat down under the tree, and he read these to me. And, my dad, he comes from that era of the old black and white cereal, the old Captain Americas and Captain Marvels and Mass Marvels and all of that stuff. And, everything is so over the top. The music is loud, it's dramatic and everything like that. And the sound effects are overblown. And he read those comics to me under a tree in the middle of the park on a summer day, and we're sitting there sucking on Slurpees, and he is reading all the captions in different voices, putting in the sound effects, putting in music and everything. It was just, that sold me. After that, I was hooked. I had to have comics.
No, I get that. I had a similar, impact myself as a kid. With my grandfather was an avid comic book reader, and he had always had comics around the house. And so I read like a Superman, the first introduction of Brainiac, and the way he captured, I forget the name of the city, in the little domed thing. That was the first thing I ever read at my grandfather's. And but now here's an interesting thing, because 7-Eleven, I have that common thing with 7-Eleven. One of the producers on this show, he manages the Facebook page for Pop Culture Minefield, is my childhood friend I mentioned to you earlier in our conversation, was Jim Woodward. We grew up together, and my fondest memories with him was going to 7-Eleven in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And we'd go hit the rack and go outside and sit on the curb right outside the 7-Eleven, drinking Slurpees or slushies and reading the comic books. But before that, with my brother living in Phoenix, because I lived in Phoenix till I was about 7, 8 years old. and we had U-Totems. That was the store.
Oh,
And
okay.
U-Totem, I was told U-Totem was purchased by the Southland Corporation and became 7-Eleven. So
7-Eleven.
technically, I've been reading comics outside 7-Eleven since I was like 2 or 3. And we'd sit outside, and my brother would read the comics to me. And so it's that same impact. I get what you're talking about with your dad, because it's not only a bonding thing for you and your dad, but it's the bond you have with comics. And and I remember my first comic book. What was your first comic you ever bought?
Spider-Man. They were bought at the same time. It's Spider-Man 125, first appearance of Man-Wolf, and Fantastic Four 143.
And I think I'm double checking right now. I think it was number 72. Mine first comic I ever paid for was the Batman Swamp Thing crossover with Bernie Wrightson, which he signed for me. It got stolen, but I had my original comic book. It was stolen like 3 years ago, and it was signed by Bernie to me. I'm like, why would you steal a comic that's signed to somebody? And
Right.
I'd had that since I was a child, and but that was my first my own money. I'd earned it through my doing my chores, and I went and I had a choice between buying a Globe magazine about Bruce Lee. It was either Globe or the Inquirer, or a comic book, and I'm like, yeah, I'm buying a comic book. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Gotta have that comic.
Hell yeah. And but I'm going to throw up some of your artwork here. People, oh no, I went both of us. Boom. There we are. Now we're really, really tiny, and the artwork is really big. This is an inking you did of John Buscemi, or I can't pronounce his last name. I'm terrible with last names. Yeah. Who's best known for working on Conan.
Yes.
The Savage Sword of Conan.
And darn near every comic that ever turned my head. I mean, he was everywhere. He did everything. He did the Doc Savage Black and White magazine.
He was a rock star in comics. There's no question about it.
Two amazing runs on the Avengers. His Fantastic Four. Actually, that first issue of Fantastic Four that I got was actually done by Rich Buckler.
Yeah, because you've worked on Fantastic Four, you've worked on Daredevil, and according to Comic Vine, you worked on Superman, at least one issue, and you worked on Batman. But the one I like the most is Daredevil, because he's absolutely, him and Batman are my two favorite superheroes.
Yep.
And they're not superheroes, really.
It's weird. Daredevil is such a broken character in a different way. He's a lawyer, but he's not a rich lawyer. He does a lot of pro bono. It's like, he used to live in a nice place. What was it? I think it was Frank Miller gave him the sensory deprivation tank. At one point, he had that in there. I'm like, well, there's his rent. He's just paying for that. That's all he can afford. That and some pain pills, and a skylight. He has to have a skylight. And then everything else is, the minimalist furniture. I mean, he's not really paying for anything. He eats out all the time. So, Batman, no. He's got, different chick on his arm.
It's funny that, because Daredevil didn't become a favorite of mine until Frank Miller. And Frank Miller made me interested in Daredevil as a character.
Frank Miller changed my world so far as storytelling, but he didn't make Daredevil my favorite character, which is weird.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually talking to my girlfriend. I muted my microphone. I did not mean to distract you.
No, it's that whole thing of you could tell that there was something different about Frank early, and then within, what was it, 3 or 4 issues, everything was done around Frank's artwork. His storytelling, his dramatic storytelling changed, because he went from being a very stock and trade grid style comic book artist telling a story in that 5 to 7 panels per page kind of a guy, and then it's like, if he did something with an entirely white background and stuck a tiny little figure down at the bottom right hand, that would be the best storytelling trick you could do.
He wanted you to focus on something, and and I love that. Another artist that did that was John Romita Jr. I liked it. It was like he would do these panels that weren't just minimalist. They were minimalist for a reason. He wanted you to pay attention to something. And that's something that I think raised the standard of comic book storytelling. People like to say that Alan Moore did that to comic books, and I'm like, no, Frank Miller did that, and John Romita Jr. as an artist did that.
And I'll tell you one thing about John Romita Jr. that I don't think he gets enough credit for, is I think he's truly, and at one point I thought it was Walt Simonson, but Johnny Romita Jr., I think you know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I do.
True inheritor of that Kirby magic.
Yep.
He has that Kirby magic, that majesty. He can create scope, unlike
he creates an energy.
Artist, right?
Because I just talked about this with Mikey Sutton. Mikey is like not only a friend of mine, I admire what he does. He is one of the best scoop guys in the entertainment business, and he's a partner with Keith and I, and we got into this great talk about Kirby, and I said Kirby had this kinetic energy in his artwork, even when his anatomy was all fucked up. You're looking at it going, that is not how the bicep inserts into the fucking shoulder. But God damn it, I love this fucking panel or this page or this cover. Yep. And he wasn't good at covers early on. His covers were horrible. I think one of the best early covers that Kirby ever did was the Mole Man one for the Fantastic Four.
Okay.
Because that's what got me to read the Fantastic Four, was that cover. And but later on, he got really good at covers.
His pre-FF monster stuff, I love that stuff.
Yeah, but he was a block drawer.
He came a long way from 1958 when he was doing Challengers,
right,
and 1961 to that small gap of time, that 3-year period. He changed so much, and I don't know. It's just like, did Stan just say, "Hey, look, if you don't draw a certain way"?
It's hard to talk about a golden age comic character that you like that he didn't have an impact on.
Right.
And Kirby, and now going back to what you were saying with John Romita, because Kirby is a very block drawing. All of his characters are square jawed, hard lines.
Right. Just imagine Reed Richards with a different haircut.
Right.
And that's everybody.
Everybody looks the same. And John Romita Jr. Came about, and I want to say something too while you were saying that. That was my problem with the gentleman that drew the X-Men for a while. I just forgot his name. Drew him in the 70s, early 70s.
Oh, Dave Cockrum.
No.
No?
Gosh. This is going to piss me off. I forgot him. Byrne.
Oh.
All the way
that
up
guy.
into the 80s. Yeah, because he went to Superman, and I liked his style. There was almost a Japanese style to his artwork.
Yeah,
but all the characters looked the same. They just had different hairdos. And that was the same thing you were just talking about with Kirby. But John Romita Jr. was, in my opinion, one of the early artists for Marvel that was really a good fucking artist.
Yeah. Early
really
on,
good at his anatomy, his faces, expressions, you know, and
well, what changed for him was there was so much work being thrown at him. He did the exact same thing that Kirby did. Kirby, if you go back to the 40s, he's classically trained. He's more focused on anatomy. His lighting is more accurate. There isn't this, a straight line It's not so abstracted. It's more grounded in an observable reality.
well, and I think a lot of that later stuff, you know, and Graham Nolan's gone over this before. We've talked about it in the past that, or was it Chuck Dixon? Well, it was one of those two. It's hard to tell those two apart in a conversation. And yes, I just took a dig at two of my friends.
They'll get over it.
They'll get over it. But was talking about the pressure that was on so many artists, including Kirby, because you know the page rates weren't very good, and he was getting demanded to do so much work that it began to have an impact on the quality. And I think that's when we saw stuff like that with the lines.
Well, you definitely see a transformation in his work from 1958 when he's doing Challengers every month, and I think he was doing a couple of other books like some true love story romance books at the time. And
I remember that stuff.
And which was beautiful stuff. It was gorgeous. Actually, everybody was doing it. Gene Colan, John Buscema,
Frank Frazetta, Al Williamson, and Bernie Wrightson, all were involved with that stuff. The romantic thrillers. And
you couldn't get away with it, from it, because it was like, oh, okay, well, you want to work in comics? Here you go, kid. And the next thing you know, you're doing, Sally's Got a Date Tonight, and that was the gig you were given, and you were given X amount of dollars per page, and you were thankful for it. And it just made the park bench more comfortable. That's all.
Yeah,
but it was the thing is like in an interview with John Romita Jr., he said the only reason my artwork has changed so much is because I had to take shortcuts in order to get the jobs done. It's all about making a deadline, and that's what a lot of guys forgot in the 90s, that you have to turn your book in.
Yeah, it's like we have a lot of artists that, and we, I hear about this all the time. Comics are late because the artists are taking their fucking time. I'm like going, man, that wouldn't have been tolerated back in the day. What the hell's going on with the industry? The industry's all fucked up now. I've lost interest in working for any publisher. I work for one publisher now, exclusively, and that's Warrior Publishing, owned by Dale Dye and his wife Julia. And it's military themed stuff. It's majority of what I want to work on anyway. I like military shit. I'm a veteran, and but I've gotten to an age, we talked about this before, where I just don't want to deal with people anymore. And because you and I are close to the same age. Am I older? I think older. I was 64 when I was born.
What year were you born?
64.
Oh, 2 years older than me.
Okay. So you're just a youngin', and
yeah, that's me, a youngin'.
Yeah, I was already watching Captain Kangaroo when you were still pissing your pants. How
many grandchildren y'all got?
Y'all got. Yeah, in our day, we couldn't afford shoelaces. We used onion skins. We'd cry the whole time. But growing up though in the 60s like we did, and hitting the 70s, you and I still hit comics right around the same time, maybe a year, 2 year difference, and but it's still that same group of people, same superheroes, same comics, and they had such an impact on us. And I got to tell you, even though he did not inspire me, Bernie Wrightson was one of those first artists I really looked at. Him and Frank Frazetta. I was just like drawn to their artwork, but I couldn't draw like that.
Yeah, very few people could. But if this is the kind of funny thing though. This is a kind of industry that if you want to get in, whether it's a pencil or an inker or whatever, it grabs you. You don't really have a say. It grabs you by the scruff of the neck and says, "Okay, now you're gonna look at this guy, and you're going to fall in love with this, and you're going to learn how to do this somehow." And it kind of just taps you in the soul somewhere, because I guarantee you, the guys that are in this business, they definitely didn't get into it to become rich. They didn't come into comics thinking, I'm going to start a toy company. I'm going to have a cartoon made. No, they're the other way around. I'm doing this here to satisfy an aching in my soul.
That's one part of it, and another smaller part of it, and it is a part. I want to be a fucking comic book god. There is that. It has nothing to do with money.
Technique of storytelling.
Yeah, I want to be a rock star, because it's just like where every kid becomes a guitarist or a drummer. Because I'm a drummer too, and keyboardist, and I played in quite a few bands. I still put out music. But I go under a different name when I put the music out, because I don't want to cross-contaminate what I do, because I do music for me and I do the artwork for money, because I'm a whore. And
nice.
We're whores. We don't give hand jobs, but we do quick sketches for $15-$20.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes I'll do it for a beer.
Yeah, I've done that too. On a fucking napkin, I did that.
Oh man!
Buy me a beer and I'll draw you a picture.
I'm a coffee drinker, but it's not quality coffee. It's like AAA or something Brothers.
I like
coffee.
Sanka.
If they had Sanka at this place, I'd probably drink that too.
My dad was a Sanka drinker. And I'm like, even as a kid, I'm like, that tastes like shit, Dad. That really does. I like it because I can mix it up real quick. And I'm like, you've got the worst tasting coffee ever, Dad.
Yeah. It's whatever they're serving at the IHOP, I'm cool with. I mean,
your normal breakfast coffee. It's just
dark, a couple of creams and a half a cup of sugar, and I'm fine. I'm not going to twitch, but I sit there with my sketchbook. I go to this little place down in Renton, and it's Renton is this small city just south of Seattle. I live right between the two of them, and I go down there. It's a little casino. It's what they call a micro casino or a mini, and it's only allowed to have certain games, but it's got a restaurant and a bar. And I sit there at the bar with my sketchbook and a cup of coffee, because I don't drink, and unless it's a special occasion. And then I will sit there for hours and just draw. That's it. And somebody will sit next to me and they'll say, "Hey, what? Oh, that's pretty cool." And they'll strike up a conversation. They'll find out, hey, well, they'll ask me ultimately, "What do you do for a living?" And I'll say, "Comics." And they're like, "Oh, that's cool. I've never met one of you before." So it's one of those kind of things. It's like I'm kind of like a unicorn in that sense. It's like, I didn't know you guys really existed. Do they still make comics? Is the question I get. And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, I'm doing one. So ultimately, they'll say, "Well, can I see something that you've done?" And I hand them my sketchbook, and they flip through it, and they'll find one in there that they like, and I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead, take it." You want me to sign it? And they're like, "Oh, would you please?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." You don't know what comics are, and you don't know where to get them, but here, take this, and hopefully it'll inspire you to walk into a comic specialty shop, because you can't find them on spin racks anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what's missing today. The old carousel spin racks.
Yep.
We need them back in convenience stores, grocery stores. And I got to tell you the truth, they would probably make a lot of money in movie theaters. especially with movie tie-in comics.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, I think the direct market, while there was a convincing argument once upon a time that said the direct market and Diamond could save the industry or could save retail shops or whatever.
Oh,
I
fuck.
think that time
Fuck.
came. I think
Fuck
that
those
was
guys. Fuck.
yeah. Well, and now fuck them even harder because Jeppy is not no.
Diamond started the shit that has led us to this point.
Yes.
Of forcing stores. I'm gonna get on my soapbox. I'll do it quick and get right back off. Of forcing comic book stores to buy titles that can't sell in order to get the titles that they want.
Right.
And worse than that, they wouldn't take returns anymore.
No returns.
It's like title doesn't sell, you're stuck with it. So what this does is it falsely inflates the sales of comics that are garbage.
Yeah.
Which has led to the SJW problem in the industry. Because SJWs think that people just love our shit. Because look, those titles are selling. They're selling because people were being forced to buy them.
Right.
And then couldn't get rid of them. They couldn't give them away.
Oh yeah. I mean,
okay, I'm off my soapbox. No,
that's fine because I totally agree because right now you have an industry that is propping itself up with astronomical cover prices. Okay.
$5 for a 22-page comic.
Or more. You know, I mean, there's been certain books that have come out for $9, $8. I'm like, are you kidding me, right? There's absolutely there's not $8 worth of content in there. Even if you gave me a winning lotto ticket, there's not $8 worth of content in a comic book. Now, what they've kind of sold is that convenience for the retailer, but at the same time of giving them that convenience of only having to go to one item to order. This is my perception. I'm not a retailer, and I'm not speaking for retailers. These are the things that I've heard and observed for myself. So take it with a grain of salt. But the ease of use of going through a catalog that's published every month, that goes to a retailer, that tells you what's going to come out, and you have to order from that. Great. That's fine. But retailers want an easier life, so they're only going to go through one or as few catalogs as they can. They are not going to go through, if there's an independent catalog, if there's an alternative catalog, they're not going to hunt those things down. And very rarely is anybody going to do the legwork to bring one into a comic retail shop that's their shop. So, it minimizes, by intention, it minimizes what can make it on the shelf to compete with the weekly output from the big two. I don't say the big five, I don't say the big four, because really it still is the big two. And the numbers that they're selling every month, when I started in this business, those were cancellation numbers. We're talking about the new Hawkeye comic, America Chavez, and what's this Miss Marvel thing that keeps coming out?
I don't know. That's so goofy.
Constantly being canceled, and they keep bringing it back with new number ones, and the number one sells. Oh, look, it's the first issue sold 20,000 copies. Yeah, but your second issue sold 1,800. You suck. Nobody is asking for you to make this book, therefore it's going to sit on the shelf. Your buy-in is 1,800, but your sell-through is like 70. So retailers are constantly getting with merchandise that nobody gives a shit about.
Oh,
and they see it. or they do see it and they're just maliciously, gonna push it down your
Yeah,
throat.
and then we get to this point now where, like, I've got a friend, Josh, whose comic book shop closed because they weren't making money because there's nothing to sell. And I blame Diamond for this, but I also blame DC and Marvel. IDW too. They all have some blame in this for putting out shitty products that nobody wants. And
can't
what's that?
And can't return.
Yeah. If a bookstore can't sell a book, they get to return the fucking cover. They tear the cover off and they throw the book away and send the thing, and they get credited, and that's how business should work. Because if you put out an inferior product that nobody fucking wants, the retailer shouldn't have to suffer for it.
Well, and there's another thing too. If you put out an inferior product and it doesn't sell, stop making the inferior product.
There you go, buddy.
That's the ultimate thing. If you're making pants in the size 92 waist, okay, and you're not selling them, stop making pants in the 92-inch waist. Okay?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep making this one pant size nobody buys. That's stupid. Nobody. That's really piss poor business.
Yeah, and it's the only size we make. But it just defies common sense and logic when you're continually looking at an industry that is performing staggeringly bad, that won't, or let me rephrase this, that is counting on the same people that fuck the industry to fix it. You're counting on the same people who screw you month after month, year after year, for the last 4 decades to fix it now by doing exactly what they've done for the last 4 decades. And you're sitting there saying, oh, thank you for not abandoning us. You guys are idiots. So
right.
I like the idea that DC's bringing in other distributors. Don't know anything about them. Don't know enough about them to whether or not they're going to actually help or hinder. Okay, only time will tell. But again, if they're here to screw us over, then it's a screwing that we asked for.
Well, that goes back to something you and I've talked about, because I'm not going to get into the politics that you and I are. We both share a very similar political view. But one of our problems is that when you get upset over one side of the government doing something, you need to get upset at the other side because they're the ones letting it happen.
Right.
And the same thing translates over to this, because Marvel and DC love the extra money they get, but they don't understand they're robbing people to get that extra money they got.
You're producing an inferior product and telling them they must have it. And there's more if you come back next month. Almost like a drug dealer, here it is, and you need it. And next month we're going to produce a #1.
Yeah, we're going to still be selling you stuff, and it's going to be really great. But then they're cutting it with like talcum powder or something else, because that's what the inferior. I compare these inferior products we're getting in comics today to drug dealers cutting their cocaine with talcum powder.
Talcum powder or baking soda, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like that's an asshole move. It really is. We're gonna water this shit down for you and make it about things that you don't give a shit about. And it's not gonna give you any of the rush. You'll think it does at first, but
and when one of the kids on the corner gets caught selling this shit, he's the one that's going to suffer for it. So your retailer is going to be the guy who catches all the flack, but it never works its way up the chain. It never goes back to the big two for any kind of recriminations. It's like, hey, why do you keep ordering this crap into your store? Because they make me. Well, say no. Collectively, get on the horn. There's
But
what,
that's the
1,800.
problem, is they were afraid to say no because they, you know, that's their lifeline, getting
Well,
these
where's
new
their life
comics. But now we're at a point where it's like we're no longer dealing with Diamond because comic book shops were already closing, and then this virus hits, and I, Keith and I talked about this a couple months ago. I said a bulk of these stores, comic book shops that closed because of this virus, will not be opening on the other end of it. In fact, I'll be surprised if many at all do, because this is bad.
It's going to be rough, especially when the same product that put us in a position where stores were closing and customers were walking away is the same product that we're going to be greeted with on the other side of this. The same thing that I am not enthusiastic about the product that we had before the thing that shall not be came along.
Marvel, like just before the shutdown, puts out that new comic book that was just garbage. I mean, everybody made fun of it. Even people who are centrist SJWs were like, "That's not really good." It's like, no kidding. What were you fucking thinking? And that giant bean-headed fucking idiot with the glasses. He looks like a comic character with a giant fucking cranium. Comes out there. Everybody's gonna like it because we got a guy that he has the power of the internet.
That whole internet thing. That's. I'm sorry.
This other character has the power to label others. It's like, what a stupid idea for a comic book. Way to go.
And the thing is when that came out, that preview came out, everybody was laughing their ass off because they thought it was a joke. Well, it's a joke, but
it is a joke, but they thought it was like an intentional one. It's an accidental joke. And the problem with these comic creators that we're talking about, this guy in particular, they don't understand how comics worked on metaphor before. They want everything to be obvious and out front. It's like, so they named their characters Snowflake and what was it? Oh my God. Safe Space.
Snowflake, Safe Space.
Do you know what was awesome about the X-Men? It could represent any fucking group. It could be talking about the Jews that were oppressed during World War II. It could be talking about race here in the United States. It could be talking about the gay community. It could be talking about any fucking community, because it doesn't narrow it down. It uses a metaphor, and they use analogies. And this was the cleverness of Stan Lee and his teams. Just so much smarter than these fucking idiots that are given jobs that if Marvel hadn't been propped up, and DC propped up by this false sales that Diamond created through forcing comic book shops to buy comics they didn't want, we wouldn't see this garbage. It wouldn't be happening today.
Right. Stop selling me something I didn't ask for.
Exactly.
This is why, and they blame it on toxic fandom and all of this stuff.
It's always somebody toxic that's to blame. Sure.
Nobody wants to see a Star Wars product out. Everybody was pissed off about the last trilogy of Star Wars movies.
Nobody likes my extra large pants that I only produce that one size. So it's toxic pant owners. That's how stupid that sounds when they do that.
Yeah.
And they're so moronic they don't even hear it.
Yeah, they don't hear themselves. I mean, it's so frustrating because they're the ones producing the product. So they can produce whatever they want, but I don't have to buy it. Retailers might be forced to buy it, but they could have a fire sale. I mean, a big fire sale. But look at what's happening. I mean, if it's any indication, if I told you that you have to open up a store and you're going to carry those size 92 pants and just wait for customers to beat your door down, and you said, okay, I'll do that, and nobody showed up and you had to close down, and the other shops are looking at you like, well, he did it wrong. He didn't order enough. He ordered too few. He ordered the wrong color. Whatever. He should have marketed it as, size 92 pants for the alphabet community. Who knows?
Well, yeah. And it sort of goes back to, I mean, all of this goes back to the 80s with the Secret Wars. Don't get me wrong. I was grateful for the Secret Wars bringing us Venom. But 1986 was the end of me reading comic books, because once I realized that the Secret Wars was nothing more than a fucking cash grab to get us to buy titles that we didn't want to read. Well, if you want to see the rest of the Secret Wars, you got to buy this comic that nobody's reading right now.
Come over here, kid. I got comics for you that you'll need.
I sold my girlfriend at the time, Patty Bagley, and I sold all my comic books except for the movie tie-in ones. Everything was gone. I got rid of all of them. And I thought I was done with illustrated storytelling. And then fucking Dark Knight and Watchmen came out in graphic novel form, and that was it. I've only liked graphic novels since.
Wow. Right about the time Secret Wars came out, I had already safely made my migration over to DC.
That's funny, because I went the other way. I transitioned from DC to Marvel in the 80s.
I followed George Perez over, and I was like, hey, there's all kinds of stuff going on over here, and out of the Teen Titans stuff, I was like, oh, Deathstroke, okay, that's cool. He's a cool character. I like this Terra character. I stuck with it all the way up until what? See, Rich Buckler did the Judas Contract at around issue 50-ish or so. Then we had the Vigilante split off from there. Ross Andrew was doing a really good book over there. Just some really good stuff happening at DC at the time. And it was, I don't know, it all started with George Perez. And I was digging it. And, buddy of mine was trying to tell me, hey, you gotta check out this new Teen Titans thing, Marv Wolfman, George Perez. If you like anything that he's done before, it looks totally different and everything like that. It's like all of his characters trimmed down and got lean, and his drawing was just as anally retentive as it was before. It was just good stuff. I was really digging it. And then I just started buying all kinds of stuff. And of course, later, towards the tail end of the 80s, then led into what started off as DC UK and then formed Vertigo. And I was like, oh, this stuff here I could get into. Yeah. And then I can't even remember if, the only things I was buying at Marvel at the time, I had walked away from the Fantastic Four. And I couldn't even tell you why. I was buying the Fantastic Four ever since that first time, like issue 143, and I never stopped. And then somewhere right around I think it was John Buscema's last run on there, and then Walter Simonson had just come on, and then I left. And then I kicked myself for not buying Walt's run because I love Walt.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's hard for you. Like, if I respect an artist, I'm not going to get into his name, but we mentioned him earlier before the show. We were talking about this one artist that I like that there was that cover with the hand on it. And I said, it looks like this specific artist. I started reading a comic because of him. But I can't stand him politically or socially. I think he's kind of an asshole. And I'm not talking about even his political. I think that the way he treats other people has come off really as an asshole, and I don't like it. And I don't think you should judge people off of their political views. I have friends who are on the left and the right, and I don't judge them on a personal level. I may not agree or like their politics, but I still stay friends with them because I like them as people. But some people don't do that. And they will make any and every excuse in the world. They'll even label it down to as much as, well, they're racist. And it's like, really, are they? Or you just don't like what they said and you want to label it that way so you have an excuse to not have to interact with them. And this person does that, and it really bugs me because I always look at people above
there's
that.
A few, and I had never worked with that particular person, but
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I've worked with other people who do the exact same thing, and it's infuriating because the person that you met and became friends with wasn't like that at first, and then they became that. Like a switch went off in their head and they just lost it. Something happened and they just became crazy. And they just say the most evil things, that if you would have said, half of what they say, a few years ago, they'd have been taken out and tarred and feathered, or they would have ruined their career. But nobody gets their career ruined, talking some of the nonsense that they talk nowadays.
Oh, it's so divisive today. It's impossible to have a conversation with somebody any longer about anything political without worrying about offending them and sending them into a knee-jerk fucking spasm. And it's like, wow. I remember back in the 80s and 90s, man, I could talk to any of my friends about Ronald Reagan, Tip O'Neill, I'm an old, I love Hubert Humphrey. He was like one of my favorite politicians of all time. And even he got caught in a corruption scandal, but that guy was one of the cleanest politicians you ever saw. He got pulled into that ab scam thing. And it's like nobody was clean on that. You remember that shit back in the 80s?
No, I was.
Were you apolitical back then? Didn't give a shit?
I was blissfully unaware about most of the political shenanigans that went on.
Not me, man. I was like, I was a Washington Post reader from the age of 12. I would read.
Really?
Oh, I loved reading politics. I hated reading sports. I played sports. I hated reading about sports. I read politics. I wanted to read what was going on in entertainment and what was going on in government. I've always been fascinated by it since I was a kid.
I had a subscription to U.S. News and World Report in high school. And when I was in junior high, I had a subscription to Time. And that was it, for news magazines. And my dad got the paper, he got the local paper. And I was like, I don't know who this guy is above the fold, but they're talking about bringing a football team to Seattle. I was happy about that. Oh, look, MASH is going to be wrapping up.
That was big to all of us, dude.
Yeah, it was.
I remember that show had such an impact on me. When my dad and I was about to say, moved from Phoenix. When my dad kidnapped me from Phoenix and secretly snuck me out of Phoenix all the way to Virginia. He wanted to move all the way across the country to hide from my mom. And we stopped off in a Pizza Hut in not Texas, it was New Mexico. It was New Mexico. And there was a jukebox, and he gave me like 75 cents or $1. And I went and I played the MASH song over and over and over again on it. It just kept selecting the MASH song because it was a hit at the time. If you remember, back in the early 70s,
Yep.
when it first came out, that song was a hit.
Yeah, I missed that show. There's a lot of good memories there. It's, you know, it's that thing that is being missed. Using the thing that you would least associate with tragedy, humor, to tell you that this tragic thing shouldn't be happening.
Right.
And using humor as your way of doing it. And it's such a lost art. You know, right now, heck, you know, if you say the wrong thing, like I said before, you know, if you say the wrong thing in the wrong circumstance, you know, if you're on a college campus and you tell the wrong joke, you're not going to be invited back to a college campus anymore. You're not going to be invited
I
to
don't
a
think
comedy.
comedians even want to do campuses anymore. Jerry Seinfeld said it's over. Do not do college.
You know, there's a lot of them that won't do college campuses anymore, and that's how you start your career. Is you do college campuses because there's a lot of campuses and they pay pretty good to get you to come and do their campus. And now that whole dynamic has changed. And it's all because of a couple people, just a handful of people that have to go to every show and just ruin it for everybody. The woke scolds.
Yeah, and it's this whole mindset. It's the whole nanny state idea that government and certain people should pick what we get to enjoy or not enjoy. New York getting rid of the big gulp, you know, just some of the stupidest shit that I've seen. It's like,
you're just not allowed to consume sugar, kids, adults. You just look. The government's here, and we're here to help. That's the worst thing you can ever say or hear. Anybody who's like going to take that decision-making process from you, it's like if you want a big gulp, and somebody slaps you in the hand and says, "Nope, nope, you can't have that." They either better be married to you, or your legal guardian and trustee of your estate, because outside of that, nobody should be doing that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's like, but people, you know, basically should be able to make up their minds what they're going to do to their own bodies, and and they constantly. And I tell people every time you create a new. That's why you're fat. Yeah, I got fat so I could own the jokes. I told somebody that when I was working for a company because Cristiano Prado, a good friend of mine, he was like, "Oh, Gerry, I worry about you all the time. You've gotten so fat, and you should do yoga and lose." He sounded a little like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he was Brazilian. He's from Brazil, and when I first met him, I pictured this little tiny, dark-skinned, dark-haired guy. And then I walk into the room to meet him, and we would be working together for a while. He's another artist that I shared an office with. And I walked in, and he's like 6'8", curly blonde hair and bright blue eyes. And the first thing out of my mouth was, "I think you've got some Nazi in your blood." And we became very good friends. I fucking love the guy. And he would just go. I was so worried about you. You're gaining so much weight. And I turned to him and I said, "Hey man, I'm happy with this because now I finally own the fat jokes and nobody can say shit to me."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Are you serious?" And I'm like, "No. Why would I be serious about it?" Oh, people. But hold on a second. I'm getting a message, and I'm going to be. I guess I'm going to get to post some scoops here.
Oh,
Um, Here we go. I'm going to load this up here. Get your reaction to it. Mikey sent this over to me. This is his scoop that they published, that the Avengers versus X-Men movie rumored with Magneto. There are more rumors coming that I'm not allowed to talk about. But I'm very excited. On July 4th, we're going to have some big scoops coming out on what's happening in Marvel Cinematic. But this is huge. You know, they're really moving pretty quickly on doing this shit. And I told Keith they were going to do this. Keith thought that they would go just with the Fantastic Four at first and maybe later do X-Men. But I said, no, they're going to start doing it. They have it now, and it's a guaranteed money. It's money.
I'll tell you what. Every time I hear Marvel Cinematic conversations involving the Fantastic Four, I just want to weep because I remember the Josh Trank fiasco, and I don't ever want him to do another one.
Yeah, it's just I'm fine with it because under Kevin Feige, despite being a bit woke, he really is pretty true to the comics. He picks and chooses what comics he's true to, but he's pretty true to what's been established or printed. And he is a true comic book fan, and a majority of fans tend to be pretty happy with his work. Not everybody's going to be happy, but a majority seem to be. And I'm one of those people. I'm very happy with most of his decisions. I thought that Captain Marvel was not a very good film. It had nothing to do with the woke ass shit because Chuck and I talked about this one time when he was on the show. I said, you know what? I can tolerate woke if it's written well. I will swallow up your garbage politics if you write it well. Proof of this, I'm a huge fan of Sergei Einstein's movie about the Russian Revolution.
Battleship Potemkin.
Battleship Potemkin. That is absolute communist propaganda, but I fucking love that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of propaganda films that I think I don't agree with the politics, but I watch the movies because they're brilliant. And if you tell a good goddamn story, you got me. And I was actually very lenient with the pilot of Stargirl because I thought it was entertaining. I had a good time watching it. Not a fan.
My 12-year-old won't let me watch it. He won't let me watch it.
Afraid you're going to dislike it.
You have to get caught up on everything else. Everything else in the Arrowverse has to be watched before we can watch Stargirl. So
yeah, my 13-year-old stepdaughter got upset because I was forced to have to listen to a show she was watching, and I was just like mumbling, blah, 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 blah. You know, old man cranky. It's so stupid. She got upset. Ruined it. I'll never be able to enjoy it again. And I'm like, you're gonna let my opinion ruin something for you. And even Deanna was going at her daughter, going, "Why are you worried about someone else's opinion about a show? You know, worry about your opinion." I don't like a lot of shit. My girlfriend has one show I can't stand watching. What is it, honey? She-Ra. I fucking hate that show. It's just garbage storytelling. I love the original cartoon. I used to watch it with my son, Benjamin. And this new show, this new iteration is just weird and ridiculous. And the character's like, you got this one character wrong. Let me tell you something. And it's like, oh, come on. It's so pandering to the lowest common denominator. Because I will defend a show if it has a gay character, but that gay character is there for a fucking reason. Oh, he's gay. The actor is clearly gay playing it. And I love gay characters. I have gay friends in my life that are so essential. And I've written a lot of stories with a lot of my gay friends in those stories. But they're there for a fucking reason. Just like my friends are in my life for a reason. I don't just slap the label on a character and go, that'll sell it. And that's what Netflix does. It just,
Yeah.
panders to the lowest common denominator, and people go, eat it up. And I'm like, why are you eating that up? It's garbage. That's not good storytelling. Now, you go to a show like The Incredible, what is it? Indestructible Kimmy Schmidt or whatever it was. I fucking love that show. What was it called?
Miss Maisel?
No, not Miss Maisel. I love that show too on Amazon. No, on Netflix, they have this show called The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Absolutely one of my favorite shows when it was on, and they canceled it. I'm like, this is a great show, and it's got, of course, this hugely flaming gay character on it. I thought was hilarious. I thought he was a great character, but he was a character built with a purpose, not just gay because we need that number, that checkbox. And I'm like, why do you do that? And why do you think that that's okay to do that? I think that is really disrespectful to gay people to do that.
I had a conversation with an editor who he was an editor over at Dark Horse, then he went over to DC. He ended up over at Legendary, and then I'm not sure what happened to him after that. I think he went back to Dark Horse. But he and I asked him. I asked him point blank. I pulled him aside at a convention. I said, "Look, I know this is a touchy subject, but I respect you a lot, still do, and I feel comfortable broaching the subject with you. Why is it that it is so trendy right now to appropriate characters who have never displayed any gay tendencies, to appropriate those characters and make them gay?" And he said, "That's wrong. It should never happen. If you want a character that is a long-time character, say Bobby Drake, Iceman, that has from day one always been a ladies' man, has always been seen around or with women and stuff." Oh my God.
My girlfriend just walked in and she's flashing this box at me like I'm gonna know what the fuck that is. She's like, and I'm like, "It's a box, yes." And finally, she sets it down to where I can put my hands on it, and this comes out. And I'm sorry, I had to show it.
Oh,
I'm a big fan of fucking Baby Yoda. I fucking love that thing. My girlfriend was with me the first time I saw him. I want that. I'm like yelling that. I want that. Oh my God, I'm in love. I love babies. I'm a baby guy. Look at that. That's something's not quite right with his head, but it's still adorable.
yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, it's the top of the head is wrong. The ridges, it looks more Klingon there. But I love this. Did you get this for me?
Yes, but I'm also getting a refund on that. They told me to keep it.
This for my birthday. Oh, is this the same people that sent me that ugly stuffed one?
No.
Oh, it's a different people.
It's different people.
Yeah, they charged her $35 for this stuffed version of the Baby Yoda, and it just was terrible. It didn't even look like anything from Star Wars.
The electronic one that moved.
Oh, you got ripped off.
I did, so I'm getting my money back. But they told.
Yeah, this is supposed to be the electronic one she bought.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, even on Amazon, you can get scammed.
But they told me to keep the item and the refund.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it. I'm going to put it right there, right next to my spinner, my Blade Runner spinner.
Oh, nice.
I'm a nerd, man. I'm a proud nerd, man.
I don't know how much of this stuff here you can see.
I can't see much of it all. Let me see if I can go wider. Let's see. Look wide. Oh, you got a nice bookshelf, man.
Oops. I don't know if you can see any of that stuff up there. But shoe boxes, drink boxes, of course, all my omnibus. This is what is that? What do they call it? Something derby. The boys, Cub Scouts do all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, the soapbox derby.
Soapbox derby, yeah. So that's a hand carved Mach 5. I
really love the precariously perched katana or tanta sitting up there, just ready to fall at any point and decapitate you.
Yeah. Well,
Hey, where can I safely put this sword? Right above my head? Just resting on top of some books. Yeah, I'm telling you, Mac, that's not too clever.
well, the sister sword to this is over on the other side of the room.
Oh, you need to put that up there too. Come on.
Oh no, that would be too dangerous. That would be
dangerous.
That would just be dancing with the devil. But yeah, this is.
Going back, we got some other scoops here. See what you think. Of course, this is the new one that I'm pretty excited about. Let's see, Swamp Thing. Tim
Bringing it back
Tim,
or making it
yeah, Tim Vo got to announce this on his show, Lords of the Long Box. Tim's a friend of mine, and he and Mikey and I have a bond. We talk, and I really like Tim's show. And of course, they're talking about the future Swamp Thing on the CW, that it's going to end up coming into the Berlantiverse. I'm concerned. I'm very concerned because I'm afraid that coming to the CW is a kiss of death to quality. Where I thought the series was really good on the DC Universe app, streaming service. I don't think it's going to be the same thing on the CW. I think it's all going to depend on who's running it. We'll find out as time goes by, but I'm not excited about this going to the CW. I'm not. Personally, I'm not. But I'm glad to see it has a chance. And
how many episodes did we get out of the last series? 8? Like 6 or
10.
8?
It was 10 episodes. Here's what went wrong. The series was fantastic all the way up to episode 7. And it started derailing in episode 7 because that's what they were shooting when they were acquired by AT&T. And AT&T came in and said, you don't have 13 episodes now, we're cutting you to 10. So they had to wrap up the story in 10 episodes. So the episode with the Blue Devil was just an embarrassingly bad episode. Episode 8, 9, and 10 were just awful. And the wrap up, it went all downhill after AT&T bought and canceled the show. And not only canceled the show, but cut them from 13 down to 10. So it's sort of like we're going to stab you and then slice your throat. And which one you bleed out from first, we don't care. And that concerned me about AT&T. But now AT&T, it's because of AT&T that we're getting the Zack Snyder cut.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword with them, And it's funny, I use sword again because there's one behind you that might follow you at any moment. Oh, fate! Thy name is Tonto. Yeah.
What say you, Kim Sabi? Oh. Little Tonto joke there.
It's also, we can bring in a King Arthur joke from the Holy Grail. It's merely a flesh wound.
Just a flesh wound.
No, it's not. I cut off your arm. No, you didn't. But Lords of the Long Box has another scoop on Marvel wants Silk Disney and Disney Plus series. Which I got to tell you, I don't know fucking shit about this character.
Again, I think it's another thing that nobody asked for. Was there a huge? I mean, wouldn't you think that you would see like?
Look, I understand something about Disney. Disney fucked up with Star Wars, and here's how they fucked up. They bought Marvel and Star Wars to get boys to come back and stay at Disney because they had the girls. They already had the girls. The girls after the age 12 still love Disney. That's a fact.
Yeah.
They were not losing their female audience. They were losing boys at age 12. They would hit 11 to 12, and then suddenly they lost interest in Disney. So Disney acquired 2 boy-centric properties, Marvel Comics and Star Wars. Now, what did the first fucking thing they do with Star Wars? Make it girl-centric. And what happened? It flopped. It just,
Yeah.
and you sat there, and I sat there just shaking my head going, you're doing the opposite of why you bought this. And then
Yeah.
you're attacking the male audience for not liking your crap. What the fuck are you thinking? So, but it seems like, you know, they're kind of stuck with Kathleen Kennedy.
Ugh.
They're stuck with her. She has a contract, and they may have to renew that contract. I don't know what she did. It's sort of the same thing with Alex Kurtzman. We're stuck with Alex Kurtzman over at CBS because of his goddamn contract that he got through Les Moonves. That contract will make him one of the richest guys in Hollywood if they break contract with him. That's how good that contract is. So, you know, I think it might be the same thing with Kathleen Kennedy. George Lucas made a mistake. He trusted her. She stabbed him personally in the back, and she also stabbed Disney in the back by doing what she did. And but Disney's trying its best through Disney Plus to do things. And I see this show, this Marvel Wants Silk series, and this is just my personal opinion, that they really do need to try to make some shows for girls that boys will enjoy too. And I get it. It makes sense to me. Just don't take my boys' you know, entertainment or my personal entertainment and try to flip it. And because you'll find me going kicking and screaming. I won't like it.
You want to get girls and boys to go over to Disney Plus for something, Gwenpool or Spider-Gwen. Do a Gwen thing.
Well, I think the whole Spider-Verse should be a series. It should be an ongoing series, and you get all of these characters. You get the mix, different races, different sexes, you know, different species. Because I love Spider-Pig. Fuck you if you don't like him, Ron. Fuck you.
You know, the Amazing Spider-Ham is great. Peter Porker.
Fuck yeah, good. I'm glad, because I was like, I want to stay friends with you, man, but I will fucking end it right here. You don't like Peter Porker.
Well, but here's my thing. Here's my thing is, and this is my only argument against the Spider-Verse is, why is it that every time somebody gets bitten, somebody passes gas, somebody has bad soda, somebody has bad eggs, they end up with spider powers? And you know, it's just this thing. It's like once everybody's a Spider-Man, then nobody's a Spider-Man. Who cares? Because it's like they're not doing this with the Human Torch. They're not doing this with Ant-Man. They're doing this with Spider-Man.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how many times
fair.
can you also remake that story with different characters? It's like,
there's no way you can remake that story that enhances Spider-Man at all. Because
if you can't do it, that's a good rule. It's a rule I live by. If you can't tell that story any better than they did originally, then you need to leave it the fuck alone. That's why I dislike 90% of the remakes out there. Now, agreed, I defend remakes because remakes have a tendency of building interest in the original film. And that is one of the perks of doing a remake. That remake may suck, but because of that remake, it brought attention to the original film. But going back to MCU,
what it does for me is it makes me appreciate the comic all that better, because here we have Peter Parker, a dork, who is
he's a nerd. He's a complete nerd.
Awkward science dork, and he created a suit. He understood the physics of being able to swing with webbing, that he created the chemical compound and the launcher for himself. He was a boy genius. He understood how to talk to Dr. Octavius eye to eye as a contemporary. He understands how to talk to Doc Connors as a contemporary, but in the film, Iron Man has to make everything for him. Makes his suit, makes the web compound, makes the shooters, makes everything else, and treats him like an infant. Like he doesn't understand the consequences of his actions, which is exactly the consequences of his actions is what created Spider-Man. So what the new films do for me is make me appreciate the original Lee Ditko stories much, much more than anything that has come out since. And actually probably since Johnny Romita Sr. left the book, because there hasn't all of those stories have pretty much stopped being those pinnacle definitive Spider-Man stories. I would say up to what issue 102, 102, 103 I think was probably the last of the this is Spider-Man's canon, and everything else kind of like is going to play off of that or feed off of that after that.
Yeah, because like going back to this show right here, Spider-Woman or Silk. I don't know shit about this character, but I guess it is another interpretation of Spider-Man, but with a girl. Timvo writes here, I want to read it. Silk would be a prize for Disney Plus, a live-action Spider-Man show with a young female Asian lead. It ticks all the right demographic boxes for Disney Plus. Now, I don't know how Timvo swings politically, but personally, everybody knows how I swing. That bugs me, because if you're telling stories based off of check boxes, then you're not telling stories.
Right.
You're focused on demographics. And I think that, have demographics in there, that's fine. But your main focus should always be in telling good stories. So, but I got to tell you, so far I've enjoyed almost everything that's on Disney Plus. We subscribe to it, and all of us watch it. I think it's a relatively good. I don't like one of the changes they did on Star Wars. It did some change recently, and I heard about it. But I've not watched the Star Wars movies over on Disney. I have them, so I don't need to watch them. And I also have the what do they call them? The D specialized editions.
Oh yeah, the pre.
Now I bought
The
and
original-
own. I bought and
original
own the
theatrical.
movies, so I have the right to have the despecialized editions, and they can't sue me for that shit. I downloaded them, and I prefer them over what Lucas did. Although there were a couple of things Lucas did that I did appreciate in his specialized editions. The whole Han Solo did not shoot first thing was just ridiculously stupid.
Now,
Right up there with Steven Spielberg putting flashlights in the FBI, or walkie-talkies and flashlights into the hands of the FBI when they're chasing the kids instead of guns. It's like, that's dumb. But anyway, I'm curious about this show. I've never heard of Silk, and I'm always, because don't get me wrong, I don't like it when people focus on strong girls for the wrong reasons, but I do like a good show that has a strong female character in it. I mean, you know it as well as I do. We enjoyed Ellen Ripley. We loved Sarah Connor, because these are strong women, but they were still feminine. And the problem today is too many people, Tim Miller, for example, want to masculinize women.
Yeah, you can't do that.
And take men out of the equation and just make the women masculine. And it's like, that is a fucked up thing to do, because you are disrespecting femininity. And any feminist that thinks that femininity is bad is not worth listening to, because disrespecting people's sexes is a problem with me, because I'm an equalist. I absolutely am. I was raised by my sisters who were feminists when I was a kid, until my dad kidnapped me. Oh no, call 911. Anyway, my sisters potty trained me, all that shit, and my sisters were diehard 1960s feminists. but there was none of that weird politics in it. It was just about equality. So I was raised with that, and I've always been an equalist. I absolutely abhor people that act like someone's not equal. I get hate on the our group that we're in when I thumbs up women in the military in combat roles.
Mhm.
I said, if they can fucking do the job, if they can carry their buddy out of combat, they can have the job. That's all I
Yeah.
care about. Because if I'm next to a woman in combat, when I was in the military, I said this at the time. I said, you better be able to fucking carry me out if I get wounded. Because otherwise, you don't belong in an infantry unit. Because
Right.
I don't want to get shot next to you. But I didn't want tiny, scrawny guys next to me either. I'm like, oh, dude, you will
Well,
never.
if that guy can't pull you out of a, if that guy can't pull you across the field and drop you into a foxhole, then he doesn't deserve the job either.
Well, exactly. And I got my future ex-wife crying in the Army because I was the lead combat medic. And we were going through a field training exercise, and I picked the second largest guy to me because I was the instructor, so I couldn't participate. I had to stand over him. And so I made her and another female drag a guy through the entire challenge. They had to go almost half a mile. And the last part of the leg of the lane was going through an oiled sand field under barbed wire. And they had to drag him under this barbed wire and oiled sand. And they couldn't get him, and they got stuck under the barbed wire. And there's me, the dick, standing over him, yelling. I said, oh, it's okay, quit. He'll just die. Doesn't matter. No, go ahead. Crying solves it. Crying's good. Let it out. Fuck that guy. Fuck him. Go on. Quit. Go ahead and quit. That girl still married me.
Wow.
But I was really strict about that shit in the military. It's like, if you want to be a combat medic, a real combat medic, not working in a ambulance or a hospital, then you better be able to fucking carry somebody.
Yeah.
Because they're going to depend on you, and you're going to let them down if you can't.
This goes to my point on just about everything lately is, can you do the job or not? It's not at your previous job, did you hit all the right check boxes? It's, can you do the job that I'm asking you to do? Can you pick up a pencil and draw? Can you ink? Can you write a story? Because I could swing a dead cat and find people who could write and do propaganda. I don't need that. I need a story. I need characters that people can identify with, that is going to change, who's going to go on a journey from this place to that place and come back a changed character, for the better or worse.
Well, that's the problem today, is that
it's interesting along the way.
Well, exactly, because most writers today that I've seen lack a fundamental understanding of how to even tell a story. They don't understand theme. They don't understand character arcs. They just don't understand these things, and they think that if I just throw a bunch of stuff together with this character that needs to tell you about this thing that I care about, that's a story. It's like, no, that's not a story. A story has an arc. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and each one has to interconnect. And every bit of your dialogue should push the story forward, not your agenda, but the story. This is one of my complaints about Quentin Tarantino. Great dialogue, but he doesn't know how to tell a story most of the time. That's why his movies have a great opening, weird second act, and often an off-putting second act, and then like this great wrap-up that has really nothing to do with what they fucking started with.
Right.
It's
I
like,
mean,
what do
even you take a look at just, I don't know, just I really can't look at any Tarantino stuff and come away saying that was a perfect film. I just can't do it.
No, even the last movie, which I loved. I love that fucking movie. was it Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? I really enjoyed the film. Um, it had so many weird ticks in it that just bugged me. It's like, why is that even in there? It has nothing to do with what you're telling. You're telling a story here. And I make fun of Quentin Tarantino because it's like, I've made fun of him since the very beginning with Reservoir Dogs. Like, man, I'm going to make a movie, man. A heist film. It's my heist film. And I'm an artist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a heist film where we don't show the heist. Yeah, that's art, man. That's art. That guy's a fucking idiot. He steals from other people. He really does. He steals from his movie. Reservoir Dogs was absolute theft of a John Woo film and Stanley Kubrick's film, The Killing. That's all it was those two films combined, and he left out the single most important part, the heist. He's like, I'm going to do a heist film and not show the heist. That's not clever. That's fucking stupid. Then show it, the whole story after the heist. It's like, why? This is an essential part of the fucking story, and you're going to leave it out. Okay.
Think about how much money he saved. He only had 2 locations in that film. He had a cafe, and a parking lot, basically a garage. Of course, you can make a film here. You're pocketing everything else.
Yeah, Tierney. I forget his first name. Is it Gene Tierney? No, the bald guy in that movie that was a psycho in real life. He made life hell for them on that set. I heard stories about that shit. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy Quentin Tarantino's stuff. I really do. I get a kick out of him. Pulp Fiction has some of the most memorable fucking moments to me. It's not a great story because he doesn't know how to tell a story, but it's got great little vignettes in it, and that's really what it is. It's a bunch of connected vignettes.
Unless you're Bruce Willis.
Yeah. I think one of my favorite films of his that absolutely failed in the middle was Hateful Eight. And did you see it?
I've stayed away from everything since, let's see, Inglourious Basterds. I haven't seen anything past that.
Yeah, I made fun of that movie too. Even though it's got some good stuff in it, carving a cross into somebody or a Nazi swastika in somebody's forehead, that's not a permanent scar if they've got money. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Scalping the motherfucker and letting them live, that's a scar that's going to stay. You know? And as long as you don't expose the brain, they might survive that shit. And explain that fucking shit.
A lot in the American West.
Oh, yeah, people had survived scalps.
People
That's right.
survived scalping on both sides of that fence. You know, nobody was spared that.
Yep. And so I thought that was really dumb. But there were a lot of things, like that opening scene is possibly, in my opinion, one of the, by itself as a story, that opening scene from Inglourious Basterds is probably one of the best scenes in cinema history.
Let me see. Wait a second. Maybe I did see that. Hold on.
That's where the German goes into the old Frenchman's home, and there's not, and he's hiding a Jewish family underneath the house. And
okay.
It's clear the German knows it.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a tremendous scene, and that should have been it. That was the movie for me. The rest of it was just like, meh, it was okay. And the same thing with I'm not Inglourious, but Hateful Eight. Great opening. I mean, all the way through that first act, good shit. Gets to the second act, and he breaks one of the biggest rules in fucking screenwriting. Do not introduce a main character after the first act.
Mm-hmm.
There's no allusion to this character. Even if you just mention them as a character that's going to be in the story, you can get away with it in the first act. But if you don't mention him as a character you're expecting to see, you're done. You're done.
Yeah, I want to say that's, you know, even the spaghetti westerns back in the 60s and early 70s, all through the 70s, they would talk about a character that you should be afraid of all through the first act.
Yeah.
But they would never, and then introduce him at the top of the second act, but you knew this guy was coming.
Yeah, because they set it up.
You never saw it.
And in the movie Hateful Eight, they don't set it up that you're ever going to really see this guy. You know, so I don't know. I was really annoyed with that. And then, of course, the narration, when it just comes in abruptly, go between the second and third act, this narration that begins and then ends abruptly. And you're like, who's telling the story now? What the fuck? You just broke the fourth wall. Why would you do that? And he did it again with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but at least he used the character in the movie to do it.
Okay.
And that one I found it more forgivable. But suddenly,
does it come in out of nowhere?
Yeah.
Does it like all of a sudden?
But it's a transition.
Starts talking to you?
It is a transition because we've completed part of the story of the second act. We've completed the story, and we are now moving. We're transitioning to a whole new period of time. So it's less intrusive than that shit. Because Quentin Tarantino just suddenly starts talking in the movie Hateful Eight. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Well, he should never speak anyway.
Yeah, I hate his voice. I hate his face. I hate his voice. He looks like somebody that doesn't know how to draw. Drawing a fucking human. He's just so fucking ugly and deformed looking. And he's got a face. Remember back in the early 90s when McDonald's created that moon character to sell McDonald's food? And that's what he reminds me of.
Actually, I have one of those.
Yeah, he reminds me of that fucking moon head. He's got that weird head. God, I'm sorry. I'm such a dick. I really am.
He should be somebody in, Clive Barker's Nightbreed. He should be.
Yeah, he looks like a character from Nightbreed. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but, but Quentin, this time uses Kurt Russell's character to read the narration this time. And it's almost like he's updating us a little bit. This is almost like a postscript. Going into Act 3 becomes like a postscript. Because this is shit that happens after he saves his career and does the spaghetti film. And then all of a sudden we get to see the characters after the spaghetti film. And it's less intrusive because we get to hear this from the character we met earlier, played by Kurt Russell. And I thought that was less intrusive. It annoyed me, but it was a lot less annoying. But once again, it's a solid third act. It's I consider the third act of that film the best part of the film. And in my opinion, one of the greatest, most violent scenes in the history of cinema. And I fucking shit you not, I fucking love the ending of that movie.
I do kind of understand Tarantino a little bit in terms of he's that guy who's a lot like us in terms of
he's very geeky. He's obviously
well and we are too. I mean, Frank Frazetta, Al Williamson, Roy G. Krenkel, Gene Colan. We can rattle off this stuff because we know the same.
Yeah,
stuff.
We're all tuned into the zeitgeist of
right?
Entertainment, comics, movies, science fiction, action. We're all keyed into that. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
we're all the same animal.
And it's not just the names of who does it, but we can take you through a sequence and tell you why it was done this way. If you've ever read Somerset Holmes, that thing is great. That thing is great. It's done by one of my favorite artists, Brent Anderson, and that was a solid body of work. Solid body of work. I don't see enough of his work anymore. I went from that, Strike Force Moratori, a couple of other things that he's done. Just recently did the Phantom Stranger reboot. What was that, 4 years ago? And I haven't seen boo from him. I swear to God, he's a great storyteller. He's a great artist. He just isn't seen enough. And, you know, I think he's, I just glossed over like his biggest chunk of his career is Astro City. So, you know, everybody should be looking at his work because he draws the lingo that everybody in this industry should be talking about. They shouldn't be talking about points and checkboxes. They should be talking about how did we get the character from the top of the page to the bottom of the page and encourage the reader to turn the page and continue on with the story. Brent does that, and he does it damn well, better than most people in this industry. Mm-hmm. And, you know, whatever you look at that's done by him, his storytelling is solid. And he got that way by looking at the best storytellers in the business.
Yeah.
And understanding how they got people to turn the page. Your Eisners, your Millers, all of those guys, you know, your Kirbys and Buscema's, all of those guys are the best, the pinnacle of storytellers. And in order to get people to want to buy your stuff, you got to learn how to draw. So you didn't look at comics to learn how to draw comics.
Yeah, you've got to be able to convey the action, and this is something that's come up like with my career. One of the things that people like about mine is my ultra realistic action scenes that are choreographed in such a way that, well, Josh Becker, a film TV director, buddy of mine, he's done film and TV. He read one of my books and he said, "You are a film director when you make your comics because your shots are blocked just like you would do if you were shooting a film." And I went, "Yeah, that's what I use." I am not inspired by any comic artist in my visual storytelling at all. I'm inspired by the film directors that I admired: Stanley Kubrick, Ridley Scott, John Carpenter. Those are the three directors who had the biggest visual impact on me in visual storytelling. And so when you see my stories, if you read my comic books, if you catch little nuances of Blade Runner, Alien, even the Duelist had a huge impact on me. And I forget the name of the film. Kubrick did about 69, 1970 with Ryan O'Neal. For some reason, that fucking title escapes me. That film had a huge impact on me. It's long, drawn out, and boring as fuck. But visually, it captivated me, and it's still one of my favorite films to just pop in and watch. And I look for inspiration visually. And I believe it's important to be able to block these things. I don't do action lines where you see the guy throw a punch and there's this big. I just simply draw the action the way it would look if you were watching a still from a movie. I did not go to comic book school, dude. And it embarrasses me sometimes because I'm friends with and have worked with some top-notch fucking people that do all that shit. They went to Joe Kubert school, learned how to do action lines. When I do action lines, I'm like, I'm out of my element. I'm like, I guess I just know how to draw the visual moment of a person reacting to something. And my facial reactions are another thing I get complimented for because, you know, in comic books, we got 4 to 5 facial reactions typically.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
It's just, whereas I get into slight nuances of close-ups. I do close-ups of faces and I show the confusion on a person's face. If you were to see it in a standard comic book, you go, is that guy angry? Is he taking a shit? What's going on with him? And with my character, you see a slight nuance. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like, is he constipated? I don't understand that expression. He just looks like he's raging.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, I believe in drawing these extreme close-ups, showing deep emotion on a person's face. And that's the kind of storytelling I'm into. I'm writing this script right now for a film. I'm going to make a film. I tried making one a few years back and I got burned by the director. I've been burned by a couple of directors that just fucked up everything. This time I'm directing it, and I went to film school. It's something I should be doing, and so I started drawing storyboards for this thing, and everybody looked at it, and went, including our friend, because you're friends with Christopher Cooksey, right?
Yeah.
He's working with me on the project, and he saw my storyboards. He goes, "These are really good storyboards," because I put everything in there that I shoot things from very specific angles, and it's a huge nod to Alien and The Thing, as well as being a very military.
You're gonna have to make sure I see this thing. I am so.
I'll invite you to the group if you want to help a little bit. I don't give a shit if you want to help with it. I'll invite you to the group. This is an independent thing. I'm going to buy some film equipment, and we're going to do a campaign. And fuck it, I want to do this. And basically, I'll go ahead and I know after the show. After the show, I'll tell you the scene because I don't want to spoil it. But we will be doing a campaign. I'll be advertising on here because my goal is just to get the camera equipment. I already have the actors I want. They're good friends of mine. And the three main characters are based on real people. And when you base them on real people, it's kind of hard to fuck up. And because all three of the main characters are based on my two best friends and me. And then I put us in situations. What would happen if this happened? And so we get invited to a ranch, and I found an actor to play me, and he's or younger me, military me, and another guy that worked on another project with me is going to be playing my buddy Mac, and the real Rob Bankus, one of my closest and best friends in the world, my brother, is going to play himself in it because nobody can do him. He's when I first met this guy, I thought he was retarded. Like, I'm not making fun. I'm not being disparaging. I thought maybe there was something wrong with him. And I kept asking, is that guy okay? Is there something wrong with that guy? He'd walk in the room, make these weird noises. And I'm like,
you
what
got
the
any
fuck
spare paint chips over there?
Yeah, he did to get back out of me. And he was just, and he helped raise my daughter, him and Mac, my two best friends in the world. They lived with me at different times or at the same time. And they were there with me, helping me with my daughter. And my daughter sees those two men as her only uncles. She loves them with all of her heart, and these guys had a huge impact on my life. And we're all military vets, and I said, wouldn't it have been funny if we had served together, what that would have been like? And that's what this story is about these three guys that served together. I make up some shit in there that, all three of us are combat vets that served in Afghanistan. That's not true. I never was in Afghanistan. But it's still my personality that goes into this one character. And a lot of the stories you hear within my stories, like I wrote a thing that Dale Dye and Julia read once. It just cracked them up and it'll crack you up too. I'll let you read it. That has a scene where a combat medic is trying to pull a giant 6-inch fang out of a guy's forearm after a battle with mutant, not baboons, but the big baboons with the big red asses and mandrills. Those fucking freaked me out, dude. And so I wrote this battle scene. It was scary as shit. And I wrote it. And Dale Dye, you know who Dale Dye is? Dale Dye loved that scene. Dale Dye, the military guy behind Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, Platoon.
Yeah.
And I work for him. He's my main boss, him and his wife. And he read that, and he says, that is not only one of the best combat scenes, that is one of the funniest things I've ever read. And Julia lost her mind when she read it because she knows the true story about how this character got bitten a dick by a cat. And I wrote that into the script, and she blew milk out of her nose reading it. It was so funny. And she goes, oh my God, I know the true story of that. And you put that in the book. And I said, I put that shit in everything I write because the real stuff that I've heard and seen in my life, it's funny as fuck. And it's crazy. And so in this script, I put stuff in here. You'll enjoy it. If you like military shit, and I know you do, you'll like it. Because these guys are veterans that have lost their way. and I talk about it. I talk about post-traumatic stress disorder, and social displacement from going from military life to civilian life. And I've had trouble with it. I still have trouble with it. I got to be honest with you. I don't get most civilians. I really don't. I like them, but I don't really want to be close to them because I don't trust them. I put my trust in people that whose lives depended on me, and I in turn depended on them, and they were there. And that was in the military. The closest friends I ever had were from the military, and I trust vets before I'll trust a civilian. And I know that sounds awful, but that's just the way we're wired. We're wired like that. And I look at another vet, and we'll have that knowing look. We'll look at each other and go, "Yeah, you get it." You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And because I've said things in front of people when I first got out of the military. I would tell stories to civilians, and they'd get the feel like, I remember human resources had to talk to me that they were afraid I was going to shoot up the business. And I'm like, I'm a conscientious objector and kind of pacifistic. Why would they get that? Because people don't understand the shit that I'm talking about. I don't share things that I've seen. I will not share with civilians what I've seen. I don't do it. But I'll do it in these stories, but they won't know what part's fiction and what part's real.
Right.
My military vet buddies know. They know when I'm talking about something. But I wanted to do something. We've had a great conversation. I really love talking to you, Ron. We got to have you on regularly. I'd like it to have Keith on here too with me, because he's a fact totem, dude. You bring up something, he knows every bit of information about it. That guy's a walking encyclopedia of movies and comics and TV. And I know a lot of shit, but I want to have you back on. And I'd like to get Andrew back on here because even though this has been fun, just you and me, two comic book guys talking shit.
Now.
But I want to talk about the project that you and Andrew are working on. And I really feel that maybe we should save that for another episode. Have you on in a couple of weeks?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to do that? Or do you want to talk about some of it right now and tell?
Let's save it for
Next
when
time.
Andrew's here. Yeah.
Okay, let's schedule something for a couple of weeks from now, and when Andrew figures out his fucking power issues. Where does he fucking live anyway?
See what happens when you convert to solar and windmill power. That's.
He was my first friend. He was my first friend in our group, our private group.
Oh, yeah?
And I actually talked to him on the phone when I left Arizona to go back to Missouri, where I'm at now. I was in the mountains, and I kept telling him, I might lose you. I might lose you. And I lost him a couple times. But we had a really good conversation because I wanted to work on some stuff. We never got around to working together on it, but it's going to happen. Before I die, I'm going to work with all my friends. I want to work with all my friends. And I want people around me who are positive, productive, proactive, and get what I'm saying and aren't going to get bent out of shape over anything I say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if they agree with me or not. They have to be level-headed people to work with me. I cannot stand, my last film project really bent me out of shape because I got involved with people that were not all there upstairs. And I didn't find out till it was too late. My director was like, he shows up at my house at like 1 o'clock in the morning crying. And I'm like, what's going on here? Are you going to kill me? Should I get a knife? He just cried, you picked the wrong guy. You trusted him. And then after he had his meltdown in my apartment, I posted something about it to some of my friends, and they were like, oh, yeah, we could have told you about that. And I got angry. And I said, you mean you knew he had problems and you didn't warn me? And this is what I told him. You'll appreciate this story. I said, that is sort of like having a close friend of yours about to date a girl that you know has fucking chlamydia or some other venereal disease. And you know he's going to be banging her that fucking night. Mm-hmm. And you don't fucking warn him.
Yeah.
I said, That's the kind of friend with you guys are. And guess what? Every single one of those people, not a veteran. My veteran buddies wouldn't let that shit happen. They go, hey, man. Because I've even done that with my veteran buddies. Like my buddy Mac, who's one of the main characters in this story. It's called Isolation, by the way. You'll like it. And it takes place on a ranch. These three guys go to help their former commanding officer because his ranch hands disappear along with his herd in the middle of a winter storm. And they are in the middle of a pandemic, coronavirus, and want to get the fuck out of the city. So they head to this ranch, get caught in the middle of this storm. They're trapped, isolated, and something's not right with these people being missing. And shit begins to happen. And even these guys who are the closest of fucking bros, man, begin to crack a little. Like, can I trust you? Are you who I think you are? It goes back to that classic question of the thing, you know, which is, are you my friend or are you infected with this stuff? You know, the whole, maybe we should prepare our own.
It never matters how close a friend you are. You're going to cover your own ass first.
Always.
If you're infected, I got to hide it.
The close reality, you know, of, and it talks about the coronavirus, you know, would people that have it just knowingly walk out and infect somebody because they're worried about their own needs? And of course, you know, the bros are like talking, man, we would never do that shit. And then they get exposed to this situation at this ranch. And we start to see some of those lines maybe crossing. But eventually, you know, I don't want to give it away, but that's what we have to work through in the story, along with their post-traumatic stress of dealing with this situation. And one of the characters says, you know, this is one of my favorite lines. I came up with this. I said, a bomb's not a bomb until it explodes, and a soldier's not a soldier unless he's doing soldier shit. And I can't tell you any more past that line because there's more to it. But it basically explains that, you know, there's, you know, I'm not functional until shit goes down, is what he's saying.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, anything you want to talk about before we split?
Because
I think we have talked almost 2 hours. That's not bad.
Almost 2 hours. Yeah. You're going to have fun.
Yeah, two friends just talking comic shit and movies.
Yeah.
TV.
No, yeah. Oh, boy.
How's that sword?
And a sword. And, you know, my buddy.
I always believe in the callback. It's my favorite kind of joke, the callback. Oh, wait, what is that? Let me see that again.
It's a Wolverine. But
Wolverine. Check it out.
Yeah.
Badass.
I got toys littered around my studio. It's like, I do realize that I have a lot of books, and they're not comic books. They're like all kinds of books on film, and oh, nice.
This is a birthday gift from my girlfriend.
I think she's trying to tell you something.
Yep. She got me this too for my birthday.
Nice.
I like the classic characters. I don't want any of the new ones. They're fucking awful.
I like the eagle you have on the wall behind you.
That is actually from my friend Brian Ray, who's a prop builder. That's handmade.
Wow.
He put that together, and he gave it to me, and I'm like, dude, yeah, I'm fucking taking it. You don't have to offer it to me twice. It's like, you giving it to me? Are you being serious? Yeah. And I took off and I left. I painted it myself. It was all gray. It had been primed. That thing's 3 feet. That's a 3-foot model kit. Yeah. I can't go back any further. It's huge.
Wow, that thing is huge.
Yeah, if I stand up it and set it on its rockets, it goes up to my hip. It's a beautiful, beautiful handmade kit, and a lot of love went into that. And I like Brian. He's one of my close friends here in Missouri. We have the old guy dinners together. That's where you have to be. Well, the rule is now you have to be over 40.
Okay.
And we haven't been doing it this year since the outbreak of the virus. But last year we were like every month we get together at least once, and we'd make keto dinners, keto desserts, and because almost all of us are diabetic.
Well,
So
I'll fit right in. Well,
yeah, man. Where do you live on the West Coast or East Coast?
West Coast. Yeah, I'm up in Seattle.
Yeah, see, I used to live in Seattle. I was up there, well, Federal Way. I
Federal,
worked in,
okay, just a few minutes south of here. Yeah.
yeah, I was
Who was
at,
that?
what's that?
When did you live out here?
I was in the Army.
Oh, okay. So you're
Yeah, and
stationed
when
in
I
Fort
went,
Lewis.
yeah, when I left Fort Lewis, I was in the reserves and I worked at the Seattle VA hospital for a while.
On Beacon. Yeah.
And then I left the military and I became a paramedic in the civilian world, and started with King County Ambulance right there in Seattle. We had stations all the way to Mount Rainier, all the way going up to Snohomish a couple times for calls, and depending on what station house we were in, so we had station houses all over the area, and and
you served well outside of the county then.
Yeah, the last call I was on was on the 405, right there, right north of Federal Way in Tequila, and a woman that we had involuntary committed her 72 hours before at Harborview, and she got out, walked out onto the highway, and laid down and let vehicles hit her.
Oh.
And finally, a truck, a big diesel truck rig, hit her, and it had new tires, and it just took off the whole entire right parietal side of her skull. And so when we got there, we couldn't transport her because that's an obvious, what's called an obvious sign of death. If you have an open brain injury, you don't transport. You just stay until their heart stops. That's what we had to do. We had to sit there with her for 45 minutes until her heart stopped. And I went back to the station house and I said, I'm done. I'm done. I didn't get into this work to do this. I get on here to do good, to help people. And it seemed like half the time I was cleaning up dead bodies, and I got sick of it.
What years were those?
That was all the way through 93 going to 94.
Okay.
And I stayed in the reserves and ended up in Illinois. And but I didn't want to work in paramedicine anymore, so I wanted to work in nursing because I got burned out pretty quickly on paramedicine.
Yeah, well, it sounds like that would do it, you know.
And even nursing burned me out because I started doing private care, and I got attached to my patient because I lived with them and took care of them. Me and one other nursing person, we were not just dealt with their nursing care. We cooked their meals, drove them places. We were their live-in butler, live-in driver, live-in medical person, and it was wonderful. But then you get attached to them, and then they're old and they die. And I said, that's it. And thankfully, that was the same time I got hired for my first full-time art job.
Ah, there you go.
And I left the medical field. I said, fuck the medical field. I'm done. And people go, did you get your PTSD from the military? And I went, no. Mine is from the medical field and from the most horrific fucking divorce you ever saw. It involved I'm a kidnapped kid, but my daughter was also kidnapped.
Oh,
and
wow.
It took a lot of work to get her back. And it fucked with my trust issues. I've got trust issues you wouldn't believe, dude.
Yeah, I'm right up there with you. You know, we'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, talk about that off camera.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, I really appreciate you coming on, Ron. Let's do this again in 2 weeks and get Andrew fucking lined up again. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I got a power outage. I'm Japanese. I'm not really making fun of him because he's Japanese, but I think it's funny when people make the mistake with him because of his name that they don't realize that he's Asian. And he gets called, like because he's very conservative, and he'll say something. He'll go, "It's because you've got white privilege," and he goes, "I'm Japanese." I love it when he pulls that card out. It's just fucking funny to me. I'm Asian.
It's always a nice card to. It's always a nice card to be able to pull. You know.
Fuck yeah, it is, especially with the name.
Because I'm half Mexican. I'm half Mexican. So when somebody says, "Well, you guys don't have to deal with the things that I've had to deal with," and I'm like, "You mean Mexicans don't have to do that?" It's like,
shut them down.
It changes the conversation real quick.
But anyway, brother, I really appreciate you coming on and talking. That was fun.
Yes.
We'll do this again here in a couple of weeks. I'll talk to you privately through Messenger, and we're going to do that. Stick around for after the show. We'll talk some more if you want to. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and end the episode and say thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for watching. Go check out Ron McCain's artwork online. Any of his books, you got to check it out. He's just an amazing artist. Really cool guy. We've been friends now for, I think, 3 years.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years.
Why did it take so long?
And what's really funny is when I find out some of my friends are friends with other people I've been friends with for like decades. And I go, how the fuck didn't we meet?
Right.
But anyway, man, thanks for being on the show. And with that, hey, guys, thanks for showing up and get off our lawns, you stinky bastard.
Hey guys, thanks for watching Pop Culture Minefield. If you've enjoyed the show, please remember to like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon. Remember, you can find us at Pop Culture Minefield on both Facebook and Instagram. Thank you again.
Y'all come back now, you hear?